Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Gate is Green. This is Urza. I will be coming to you live from the Avuken system, and the show is co-hosted by Liz Lizardbreath.
I am Liz Lizardbreath. I'm excited. Let's go.
So we're just a couple old veterans coming back to the world of EVE Online, and we'll be sharing with everyone different points of view. You know, there's enough going on in the EVE content creator space covering things like faction warfare space and nullsec. So we're going to be leaning a lot into the forgotten areas of high sec, low sec, wormholes now and then. And what are some of the things you think you want to be bringing up in the show, Liz?
All of the things. We are bringing all of the things. If we are dealing with anything regarding EVE, we're bringing it. We may not live out in every area, but that doesn't mean that we don't go out and visit them. So
yeah, so just to give everyone a bit of rundown as to The Gate is Green. Like I said, Liz and I are two old vets that were out of the game for a while, and we're slowly making a comeback, and hopefully we'll be one of, many players that are slowly making a way back to New Eden. In addition to making a comeback and sharing our insights and experience with everyone, we will just be kind of keeping up on the news. This week, we're going to be talking a little bit about all the hype with the Equinox expansion. But before we get diving down into the talking about the stories, I'll give you a bit of a rundown about how we anticipate sharing all the exciting EVE content with everyone. So it's our goal to do an episode every week. And in every episode, Liz and I plan on covering about 2 to 3 segments in episode. And then what we'll do is throughout the week, we will drop the content from each segment. Starting our initial platform will be on YouTube. And then what our eventual goal is to expand to all the other places that you like to listen to your podcast. So that includes Spotify, Apple Podcast, and maybe even Audible if we can somehow make that work. I haven't really looked into it too much yet. And then what our goal down the line is, hopefully sooner than later, what we'll do is a follow-up live stream on Twitch where you, the listener, can engage with us over the content that came out over the week. We can answer questions, kind of go back and forth, and hey, hopefully maybe you can educate us on some things. We don't claim to know everything about EVE, but, and we can even kind of jump into some possibly new topics. Who knows? And Liz is I would say a more seasoned streamer than myself, so she'll be taking the lead on a lot of the streaming stuff. But don't hesitate to reach out to us through any of the social media. We're always open to tips, suggestions, whatever you want to offer. We're open to it. We encourage everyone to fly safe and be friendly to one another. So yeah, go ahead.
If you hear thunder on my side, I'm sorry. I apologize. I do stream. I have in the past. I am coming back to that as well. I think our whole goal here is to start getting people back into friendly places to where they can actually have a conversation without it becoming a salt fest. I mean, we don't mind a little bit of salt, but I mean, when it's null sec versus high sec versus wormholers versus low secers versus faction warfare, and everybody's like screaming at each other, and it's like, wait, let's just have a conversation. Let's bring it back down a little bit, take the heat out of it, and explain to me where you're coming from. And I think that's where we're trying to broach different than what we've seen in the past. We used to have places that had an opening, had places where you can have the communication. You're still going to get the salty ones. I mean, we all know that. There's going to be a troll in every group. Let's just not buy into that. Let's come together and open something new. Open a new can of worms. How's that?
Yeah, and expanding on that a little bit. I don't want people to get the wrong impression that, this is a really soft space and we can't take criticism or or even healthy debate. And that's not true at all. We're definitely open to debate and all opinions. But the thing is, we want to bring a different, I would say, flavor of content to the EVE creator space. And like I said, that goes with us not doing as much of an emphasis on the null politics and the null wars. I mean, don't get me wrong, if there's something that's going to be big in the news and game impacting, we're going to cover it here. But we're not really going to lean on that as much as you'd find on some of your other news sources or the podcast or the YouTube videos. EVE, look at it this way, and I think Liz would agree. We want to kind of keep the air in our community similar to what EVE was back, let's say, almost 10 years ago, even maybe a little bit more than 10 years ago, where EVE was a lot more collaborative. EVE was a lot more diverse. And sure, there's always been a large population in null, but there's been a greater, back in the era when there was greater cooperation across the board in terms of, player mindsets and specialties and the kind of groups that work together. And there was even more of a respect for, I would say, the different security tiers in the game. So it wasn't all about null. There was respect and good content in high sec and low sec. And then, wormholes came along with Apocrypha. So we definitely, we want to lean in more in that direction. And I think giving a little bit of background, and Liz, you can take the lead on this, share with some of the people, just do a brief overview of your history in the game.
Oh, I started out with you guys out in LowSec. My first day in the game, I actually had you pod me because at the time we didn't have the programming and stuff that actually showed you what death was in the game. But I wanted to know because everybody was like, this is so horrible. You don't want to be podded. It's scary. And I hadn't set up a medical clone anywhere close. So when I got podded, I had to go all the way back to the new starter system and come all the way back out. I mean, those are the things, though, that, that made that part of the game. I lived in scary space for most people, so end up getting potted, coming back out, all the way out to, where were we at the time? Gonin? Seshmarin. Gonin. Somewhere in there.
We were out in Kador Losek at the time.
Thank you. So from there, I was, got the training under my belt, left it training for 3 weeks, didn't do anything in game. And then once I got a little training under my belt, then I came back in because I actually had skills to play. And things like that, because I think at the time it was the month-wise player promo that everybody had, where you give somebody 28 days or something. Filled the queue, came back, started playing.
So when you say training, you're talking about training your kind of your core skills, right? Your character skills.
Yeah, sure. Like any new kid actually knows what the hell any of that is. There's plans for it. If you don't know where to look, let us know. We'll make sure you get hooked up the right people, or hook up with EVE University. They have skill plans available. I think there's even skill plans now, even, I have to dig a little bit, but I think there's even some in the forums. There are places to seek help if you need it.
Yeah, when you look in the right places, there's a lot of resources in EVE to help people. So as Liz was saying, and some of you have probably gathered by this point, Liz started out in the game flying with me. I was the leader of her corp at the time, and we were living primarily in the low-sec pocket of the Kador region, doing low-sec industry, a lot of gate camping, those kind of shenanigans. And then eventually it went over time to lead to territorial wars with some of our more piratey neighbors. But that was probably, I want to say that was near the 10-year mark for me and EVE. So I've been in EVE. I've had a number of accounts through EVE, but one main. and since 2007. And my focus for a number of years is primarily industry. I've always been fascinated about industry and low sec. I started out as a line miner when a whole bunch of hulks would sit in a conventional high sec, low sec belt eating ore. So, we didn't have things like orcas or porpoises or now rorquals these days. And soon a whole bunch of other new exciting ore ships. And then, after a few years of doing that, Liz came along, and about a year or so later, we really jumped into the Citadel game. And we ran what was a group of stations and tried that out for a while, really got into the moon mining thing, and decided to take my hat off of leadership for a while and just kind of have been living the more chilled EVE life now and then. And then Liz and I, we've played together consistently. Well, taking the cat out of the bag, there's a lot in the EVE community who know of us. We're actually brother and sister. So we very often have played together, and when one goes away, the other kind of goes away, then the other pulls the other back in, and whole lovely cycle. And here we are. But this time we decided to share it with everyone through a podcast and share some of the news, share some of our fun stories, and even some of our experience, and where, like Liz was saying, with being a resource for new players in the community, there's a lot of resources. And like she was saying, if it could be EVE University or some of the other sites out there, or even some of the great content creators who put videos together that talk about various aspects of EVE, if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us. Put questions in the comments section. Or if you happen to know our in-game names, reach out to us through a mail or Twitter/X, formerly known as Twitter. We have one. We just haven't got it up and running yet fully. Probably by the time this airs or a little bit after, we're going to have all the different pipelines up and running. So don't hesitate to ask questions, or even if you have suggestions, like I said earlier in the episode, don't hesitate. But definitely new players, it's critical. Don't be afraid to ask for help. And don't be afraid to ask for suggestions. That's a lot of why Liz and I are here. That's actually what draws us, speaking for myself, back to the game. It's the community, it's the people. I mean, sure, I love space pixels and I'm really into science fiction design. But I think the thing, like Liz and I have spoken a lot together over the years, people keep bringing us back, right?
Oh, that's definitely the thing. And my thing is the new kids. Anytime you're a new kid, you're experiencing this for the first time. It is extremely overwhelming at the beginning. It has gotten better with some of the training programs and things that they're doing, but you are going to either need to learn how to research things or ask for help, and never be ashamed to ask for help. And if you have questions, reach out to those in the community, and there are plenty of us out here who will not hesitate to help you. So definitely grab a hold of somebody. You can find me, through the EVE mail. You can find me on Twitter. You can find me on Twitch. You can find me on YouTube. You can find me through my email address. That's even hooked to most of my, social medias. I don't ever want anybody to feel like there's a roadblock to finding somebody friendly to deal with. I am late night Pacific US time zone. Most time I hit Australia and our early EU, RU players. So if you're in that time zone, look me up. I'm usually around somewhere. I mean, there are lots of resources out here. A lot of people are so overwhelmed with the cliff to begin with that literally the first thing you're going to need in the game is the wiki from EVE University. That is going to be your lifeblood, and you can build off of that.
And I was going to say, in addition to things like EVE University, isn't there I know there used to be, so forgive me for forgetting. Is there still currently like a big help channel in the game where you type and talk to other players?
There is
Or is that still a thing?
yeah, oh
Or
yeah, they have that. There's the starter help. I'm having a brain fart on the name of it. Somebody will come up with it and pop it in here to us. Um, it's in the game when you first start the game. There's definitely help channels in there as well. There are tons of streamers out here. There are tons of YouTube video makers. They're a little bit smaller and harder to find, but once you find them and help them start growing, then we start seeing things again. And that's kind of like being part of the community voice, is coming through and helping build people's knowledge. That is in probably my biggest thing about EVE is whether you're friendly or not friendly, majority of the time people are going to steer you in the right direction on how to find or who to find an answer from.
and I know for a lot of young players, and we're not going to stay on this topic long, where we've kind of sidetracked a little bit, but we really want to help newer players to understand, there's options. And I know part of the lure of the larger alliances is we're talking some of the large null groups. I won't name names. They're not afraid to pump you with knowledge that's very tailored to their worldview. And I would just encourage some new players coming to the game. That's great if you really want to jump into their mindset and their style of play. But I would encourage, learn a little bit on your own and even give some smaller groups a chance, because more often than not, the smaller groups are sometimes run by just very chilled, seasoned vets. Sometimes not. There's always good and bad ones out there. But the other thing that's a really, I think, captures one of the core experiences of EVE is a group of younger players forming up together and learning together. That's how I started out. And I would have to say that is what drew me in, was the CEO I had at the time. He'd been in for probably about a year ahead of me. At the time, that felt huge, right? But in the grand scheme of things in EVE, hardly, a blink longer in time of experience. And, if you really want to have an experience where EVE feels massive and expansive and exciting, it's actually jumping into the smaller groups and learning together, as opposed to these massive groups, which will just throw you walls of texts and training plans, and they say, don't question it, just do it. Sure, they'll race you to the top really quickly. You could be in a battle cruiser in a matter of, I don't know, without skill injectors, weeks, with skill injectors, hours. But there's something that I encourage players to not join in a rush. Relish the newness and relish the vastness and learn interactively, and that means go out there and get blown up, whether that's getting blown up by a rat in a site, or like how I lost my very first battle cruiser. I lost it to belt rats in high sec. So even more embarrassing. I tried a Brutix for the first time when I thought I was badass and no one could kill me. Yeah, belt rats killed me different times, but it made for such an exciting and fun experience. And give EVE a chance and its scale a chance. And one thing the new players, I'll say for sure, have a big advantage over, like Liz was talking about earlier. There weren't skill plans when Liz joined up. We sent her to a spreadsheet. That's where now isn't there like these skill plan cues the groups can give you?
Literally just linked the eveonline.com /EVE TAC Academy. There is links directly for that now. Yay! I'm excited about that. I hadn't seen that. So that's like, oh, awesome. Things like that. I'm not going to poo-poo anybody going anywhere and trying anything. Just remember that you are yourself. You do not owe an allegiance to anybody if it doesn't work for you. Don't hesitate. If a group is not for you, don't hesitate to leave. You're not under obligation to anyone. If you find friends in there and you work it out, then you stay and you work it out. And if not, there are other places you can find friendlies that you will be more inclined to you. I think that is probably one of the things I hear the most is, well, they helped me start and I feel obligated. And it's like, you don't have to be. This is Eve.
Or
you
very often the ISK traps where they trap you with, oh, we gave you 1 billion ISK, blah, blah, blah.
or yeah, it's like, I relished that first 25 million I was gotten, and I have then now turned and handed off probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of times now to new players just starting out. Because I always said that if I got something, I would pay it forward, and I've paid it forward. And that's the thing about Eve. People are very generous, um, but don't take it that you're obligated to either utilize that or even be indebted to somebody for that. Just like Urs talking about an embarrassing thing getting blown up. There is no embarrassment about getting blown up. Don't let anybody talk you into that. I'm sorry. That's not my way. Things are going to happen. You are going to lose ships. They are replaceable. The golden rule of Eve is don't fly anything you can't afford to lose. And that is that for a reason. If you only have one venture, you don't take that into the riskiest situation until you know you can afford to buy a second venture and maybe even a third or a fourth. It really doesn't take that much. And there are people willing to help. Seek them out.
And as much as we're still on this tangent down this newbie rabbit hole, we'll move on in a second, everyone, but take advantage of some of those starter career missions and they'll come to me, epic arcs. They'll do some ships. It's a bit of a grind, especially that SOE epic arc. I've only completed it once in all my years in EVE, and it's like to me, it's like pulling teeth. But, I can imagine as a starter player, it's a great resource for the things that it gives you.
I do it like every 91 days. As soon as it's available, I try to get it done because I'm always using that to adjust my standings for the factions. So it's like, I mean, if there's going to be a way for me to get 5.0 standing with all the factions, I'm going to do it. And that's how I'm going to do it.
I would rather grind level 4s till the end of time. But anyway, so this is a good transition point to jump on a topic that's been getting a lot of hype. Well, first, before we jump into the Equinox thing, Liz, did you see, and I'll provide a visual reference for everyone here, did you see the new Upwell video that was posted today?
New Upwell video? No. Where was that
There's a new, it's an actual Upwell ad. So it's not a scope video. It's an actual Upwell ad and talking about enriching lives kind of approach. For those who can't see, basically starts where it's following like an elderly gentleman in a wheelchair. A variety of things happen in the video. I won't go too far into it. And they talk about, I think it's basically hinting at they are now taking over cloning technology. And they took this old man who looked like he was near the end of life. He was very, very old. And they transitioned him into a new body. And so it almost looks like what Upwell is doing for those who are lore hawks. Not everyone in New Eden can clone, like the Capsuleers in the EVE universe. Basically the people who are Capsuleers and can fly the ships in EVE, our characters are considered in the lore to be like the social elite. We were able to afford this ability, and the billions on the planets below are just beneath us. But I'm kind of thinking this video is hinting at Upwell is bringing cloning technology to the masses. That's probably where the whole reagents thing.
Sorry, all I had is this visual of zombies. We are going to be reanimated.
Yeah, I mean, anyone listening, you should definitely watch this video. I'll put an image of it up for the YouTube feed so people can see it. I'm not knocking it. It's a great quality video, but it's a little creepy in the fact like this guy is reanimated. And what's interesting is at the point after like they talk about cloning and he looks suddenly optimistic and then the old man disappears and you see the new man, there's like 4 people. So it's like, wait a second, did they make him 4 times and he's in 4 different bodies and like each body's in a different color uniform? So it's like, did they clone him 4 times and now he has 4 jobs?
It's on the EVE Twitter feed too. I pulled it up here and it's like, I can't wait to watch it now. Because like,
I'm kind of wondering if this is where I didn't read anything about the video and I haven't read the comments, so this could totally be answered and I'm just being an idiot. But I'm kind of wondering if this is where the whole reagents thing is coming from. And going back to the Lorehawks thing, anyone who is into the EVE lore, especially the novels, look at the content of this video. And to me, it brings up questions of, what's his name? He's the villain of, I want to say it's Burning Life. But there's this character who's kind of a criminal and it's never ever solved. But he can run multiple bodies at once. And I kind of feel like, is Upwell kind of his like long-term creation down the line? Like, is this hinting this villain kind of went dark and, oh God, I have to find his name now. And because it just feels very similar to like what he ended up doing in the books, where he's like running around in multiple bodies simultaneously doing things. And like here in the video, you see this one old man, then like boom, four young, fresh people, and they're prospering. I don't know. It was interesting. Anyway, I digress.
People have already speculated about the reagent, and it's like, you know what? We've got almost 6 weeks before it comes out, and it's like we may have. Obviously, there's a follow-up from what they released on Tuesday, right? I mean, here's another new video. Are they going to point to things? Are they going to make us guess? You know, since I've been playing, and I'm sure it was probably before me, the soon trademarked has always been a thing. It'll be coming soon trademarked. I mean, that's the thing with EVE. You're going to have your highs. You're going to have your lows. You're going to have the nerfs. You're going to have where you're superhuman abilities in some places. It's just one of those things. It's like, you know, every game you're going to have your good days and your bad days. You're going to have your good moods and your bad moods. The speculation on this is just, it's cracking me up, because it's like, there's not a lot that kind of affects what I am doing in and around the game. There's a few little things that I'm excited about, but a lot of this is maybe trickle down. We'll see. We'll see how that pans out. So
while you were talking, I'm frantically looking for information about the villain from the first book, but I haven't found it yet. It was a really vague name. It was like an adjective, but everyone knew who they were talking about. But anyway, and that's why I prefaced this, you know, with some lore warning that I think this video could potentially be leading down a deeper rabbit hole, but I'm probably also overthinking it. And talking about lore and talking about getting people into EVE, for those who really do like games that have lore and a lot of substance and story, that's one thing we should warn you players now, is that's sadly one of the weakest points in EVE. And I'm not talking in terms of the lore content. EVE has massive amounts of lore, largely driven by the players, but the game doesn't put it in your face. The game doesn't theme park your experience. If you're really into lore, you have to find the lore itself. And I think that's the large thing that kept me with EVE, was there's such a rich tapestry that existed within the EVE lore. There's a lot of story there that explains like why the Luminaire system is the way it is, why there's a famous border zone between Caldari and Galente space, and why there's the Amatar and the Minmatar. And there's so much there that's really interesting, but you have to seek it out. And so just know that if you're expecting something that will theme park your experience, sadly, this game won't do it. But don't give up. There's a lot of great content out there to read. And there's even a lot of groups that will role play. So you almost feel like you're kind of in a theme park experience. It's a voluntary thing. They're not going to shove it down your throat. Anyway, I think that segments onto us talking about Equinox. So we talked a little bit about the video today, which Liz now has to go watch, and now I'm going to go watch it again later. So Equinox, the massive new expansion that's coming to EVE on June 11th, 2024. I have some mixed feelings about this expansion. Cover some of your highlights, Liz, and then we'll dive into the details.
Well, LowSec is getting a moon module. That's about there's so much coming for nullsec, and we already have so much coverage of nullsec for other places that it's like we're not gonna find anything that is somebody else hasn't theorized on. I think the new information is going to be the SKINR that all of you people who like to design things are going to love.
You're saying in terms of content that benefits everybody, not just nullsecers, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't live and work in nullsec. I only go visit to shoot things occasionally. You know? I mean, so it's not like it's really anything big. It's not in wormholes. It's not in, vast majority of not going to be in lowsec. It's not going to be in highsec. It's not going to be faction warfare, you know. So really the only places that's really going to benefit and kind of change things is going to be nullsec, and it may benefit them greatly, and it may just be another place where they feel like it's a blackout and they were promised so many things, and then they're going to go grab their pitchforks. This is going to be one of those things where we're going to have to wait and see how they actually either adapt to it and enjoy it, or it throws monkeys in the works, and you know, the cogs are going to start breaking off from the springs and everything's going to collapse. And we know CCP loves the chaos. They love trying to throw the chaos and things like that at people, and some people adjust to it and some people never will. So let's just wait and see. I know the SKINR you are super excited about. I just want a hot pink and teal ship, okay? And, you know, I would have loved to have seen the characters get a couple of different hairstyles. I still would love to be able to wear a baseball cap and have a ponytail out the back of it instead of being bald underneath it. But those are my personal things, and other people are going to scream, cat ears!
Well, I will say, when it comes to the SKINR, at least the ship that they're showing off in the preview image, it is a pretty hot pink there going on.
I'm loving it. I'm loving it.
That's a Merlin. Yeah, hot pink and orange Merlin. It looks like it has a little bit of flame action going on. It's definitely hot. And yeah, outside of EVE, I'm a professional visual and graphic designer. And this has been a feature, talking SKINR, which is allowing players to create their own ship skins and then sell them. Did they decide, are they going to be selling those for ISK or Plex?
It kind of hinted that way, but I don't know. Honestly, I do not know. It's kind of hinted at it a couple of different ways. People have speculated about it a little bit, but until it's out, we don't know.
I'm seeing Plex mentioned here in the article, which still means some real money is being traded here, but that really shouldn't surprise. But I'm kind of curious, yeah, if it would stay Plex, or maybe down the line it moves to an ISK-based trade, you know, who knows?
But you can still, if you've got enough ISK in game, you can buy enough Plex.
Yes, that is very true. That's one of the features that is coming to Equinox that benefits, I would say, everybody, especially the talented. I cannot deny I will probably spend quite a few hours in this tool trying to make skins for some of my favorite ships and maybe try cornering a market. And hey, if the Gate is Green is doing well by then, maybe we'll come up with some special Gate is Green themed ship skins. It'll probably be favoring Caldari and Galente since those seem to be some of our favorite.
I'm not either, and I know people love them, and it's like, you keep your duct tape and dirt over there. I am a missile chucker at heart. I can't help it.
So yeah, some of the other features I wanted to bring up really quick. The video that we were talking about, the Upwell video, apparently it's tied to not reagents, but just the workforce component of the Equinox expansion. Because when you go to the Now Equinox page, anywhere it says workforce, it's now a link and it links directly to that video. So I'm kind of curious if that means over the coming weeks, we may even see more Upwell videos, one relating to power, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and maybe finally answering the question that everyone is asking is, what are these reagents? Because it's kind of vague, and hopefully we'll get a video.
They sure, all the things workforce are linked to the video.
Yep. Link to that video.
That wasn't there yesterday. So we're going to have to check this thing almost daily now.
Yeah. Keep an eye on YouTube and on the Twitters for new videos. So getting to the crux of what Equinox is, we did talk about one of the exciting components that applies to everybody, the SKINR tool. In addition to something that's not one of the tentpole features of the expansion, but they are doing things to improve organizational management for Corps. But the real highlight that they're leaning on for Equinox is the expanded upon, and I guess you could say completely revamped PI system in terms of how players interact with PI. And the slogan of Equinox is seize the dream, seize control. And CCP summarizes it as the Equinox expansion is a first step towards a radical reinvigoration of nullsec space. So like Liz and I were saying earlier, it's unfortunate, but the majority of probably about a good 90% is favoring nullsec, which I feel there's some lost opportunities. And at the core of this reinvigoration of nullsec and the PI angle is a new structure called the Skyhook. And the Skyhook is essentially a much more capable and what looks like dockable version of the customs office. And what's really disappointing is it not only kind of is the main interaction point between PI and the players, but it's going to provide access to power, workforce, and reagents necessary for empire building aspirations of nullsec organizations. So probably has some hints with Vanguard, but it goes beyond its kind of PI uses or industrial uses, we'll put it that way, not just PI, where it can bring additional content in terms of pirate orbital blockades, NPC encounters with potential to attract officer level enemies. So we're looking at getting more faction drops. Those officer level enemies could also be pirate dreadnoughts and even pirate titans. So we're talking bringing more of your really sought after pirate capital and super capitals into the game. It could not only drop resources in an item, but we're probably talking really good blueprints. So this one structure is really serving a lot of purposes. It's probably going to be, like I said, your new PI interaction point, and I would probably dare say storage point. We have multiple images of this structure, and I'll be posting them throughout this portion of the video. But it's, in addition to the PI and industry and being a new interaction point, it's also playing a big role in NPC, content for the inhabitants. And that's why I'm saying everything that's offered in this expansion, I think this is the one thing that should have gone beyond nullsec. I would have liked to have seen the Skyhook be a possibility in low, but definitely wormhole space. I can understand why something like this would just would be a no-go in high sec. This is kind of an obvious structure that wouldn't belong there, but I don't know. I'm kind of torn with the Skyhook.
I think we all are, because we actually don't know what it's going to all entail yet. So I am not getting my hopes up. I'm not getting my hopes down. I'm just going to wait. I'm just going to wait and just kind of, meh, it happens, it happens. I mean, there's so many possibilities. And then the 4 new ships, we have a little bit of information on. You know, I do like that our corporations are going to be getting a new facelift for hopefully dealing with the UI system for that, because oh, it's a pain. That's a pain to set up. Let's see what else. Oh, all the new stuff for the air being reworked, the air program, dailies and monthlies. That I'm excited about.
Yeah, that's definitely generating good content for everybody, not just Null. And like Liz had mentioned, in addition to the structures, which I'll mention the others here in a second, one thing that's kind of interesting that they're bringing in tandem or out at the same time with these new structures is 4 new ships. And they're going to serve, from what's being described to them right now, which is very little, of course, they are all going to be haulers, but they are all in relation to reagents. So something to do with this whole new PI industry thing. And it comes out in 4 flavors. And your entry level is going to be the Squall. Then above that, you have the Deluge, which is going to be your blockade runner. So it's going to have covert ops capability, high warp speed mobility, and immune to cargo scanners. Then above that, you're going to have your deep space transport equivalent, which is the Torrent. Micro jump drive capability, and it's going to be a little more tough, which DSTs is they're commonly on the tougher side to kill, unless you have a bunch of tornadoes camping the gate. That's a whole different story. But the one that's gotten the most people intrigued from what I've been reading is the Avalanche. This is a massive freighter with a huge reagent hauling capacity. So we have to assume we're looking at our first niche specific freighter. We have the jump freighters and we have normal freighters now, but this feels like it's taking these 4 ships on a direction very similar to the Galente haulers, because every one of the Galente haulers have kind of a different specialization. I'll pop up the image with the name, but I forget the moment. There actually is a Galente one that specializes in PI. And so it sounds like these are kind of taking that role, but in 4 different sizes and flavors. So just more ships for people to add to their collection. I will probably tinker with them, because one thing that's really interesting about these ships, I'm curious what the community reaction will be, especially after they're in the game. These are the first freighters to be designed from the ground up with a combat capability. They can launch missiles, which is new.
Missile chuckers everywhere. Yay. I'm excited about this one. It's like, but they're specialized. If I'm playing with an indie ship, I want to be able to have some defensive capabilities other than just having a big ass tank.
So my question is, do you think they gave these defensive capabilities or these combat capabilities the result of where they're targeted being used, so null, or do you think that they're essentially trying to use these to combat the problems of other freight/haul ships going through high sec? Because presently, one of our other haulers are designed to have a combat capability, so this feels different. Why do you think they did it?
All of the above. I think they're probably sick of hearing people who play in any kind of indie ships going, but I personally wish I had more capabilities or options in some of the haulers, or indie ships, period. I would probably play in them more. I hate being, first of all, you're slow, and I hate going slow because everybody knows, or if you don't know, my favorite ship is the Kestrel. So being slow and taking jumps forever, you enjoy that, Urs. I do not. I want to get there, and I want to get there fast, and I want to be done with it. I hate being that sitting duck or having to wait for somebody else to be around to be your eyes and ears ahead of you. The gate is green. Waiting for that call. The gate is green. I love it for when we're doing small stuff and little things like that. When I'm hauling or trying to transport something, I hate it. And I don't want to have to pop on another character. I have my main. I love my main. I love her. So...
Yeah, so like Liz was referring, I mean, there was a number of years back when we were running the group Makusuro. It was not uncommon. I was space trucking 1 or 2 freighters in and out of Amar per night, getting supplies for everyone or getting supplies for one of our stations. And I am one of those people where I will put the ship in the first-person perspective. So you're looking through the little rectangle thing on the screen as opposed to your camera orbiting your ship. And I just got pleasure going back and forth in the space truck and the little bit of tense moments where you think you might be getting nabbed somewhere for another, or even those long nights where I'd be jumping around low sec, resupplying pauses and pulling old moon mind materials. Yeah, I got a big thrill out of it. And so the addition of something like the Avalanche, which has this combat ability, and of course it'll look cool. You know, it's designed by Upwell, so it's gonna look interesting and different. In response to what you said, Liz, about hating being in that slow, vulnerable ship, the next thing that kind of comes to mind talking about these ships having weapons, do you think this could possibly be a precursor to maybe finally freighters as a whole could be getting weapons? Could this be a preview to something coming down the pipe? Battle freighters.
You know, I would cheer for that, right? Please give us. I would love it. Give me a way to at least have a fighting chance, or early the illusion of a fighting chance of being able to survive a gank. That is, you know, that would be, oh, that would be my cup of tea. I might actually go sit outside of Jita just to just to play games.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be surprised. You know, this is a topic that, I mean, Liz and I and many in the community have talked about for years, of the drawbacks of freighters and how the game could make efforts to kind of balance them out and give them a little bit of a more fair chance and even. And I wouldn't be surprised as we get closer to the release of this and we get information about the Avalanche, you know, and these other ships, or even on release date. I'm sure there'll be a topic talking about on how freighters could be improved, because I'm kind of thinking this is going to be a test bed for something. And I'm hoping, even though I think it's a little naive, that CCP is going to possibly give haulers, and that includes the freighter, a long overdue upgrade. And we're not saying making them multi-thousand DPS warships, but giving them something to where it's going to be harder to gank that ship and it has more of a fighting chance. I'm really curious if the Avalanche is the beginning of something. But besides looking cool.
What can I say? I mean, really, what can I say? I mean, that I actually might enjoy better. We all know that you actually love your battle orcas. I have never had a problem with bringing out a battle venture. You know, we have done that because it's been fun. Having the option to do that in a hauler freighter, I mean, just, God, can you, oh, my mind.
So what Liz is referring to, she brought up the Battle Orca thing, is I have been a die-hard fan of orcas since they came to the game. I bought my first one. It was the first one my alliance could build. And oddly enough, a week after I bought it, we got into what we call the triple war. We were in 3 wars at one time. And kind of the epicenter of this war was Amar. And the way I ran the war, I was the executor of Spectrum Alliance at the time. I was actually in a cloaked orca sitting several hundred kilometers off of the Amar station. And back then, the visual range beyond the station didn't have the same kind of dynamic visual range that it does now, where it's a 13,000 kilometers now. And yeah, some of our guys would, when they'd lose a ship, they would just warp to me sitting in an empty space in this cloaked up orca, and I'd uncloak. They'd grab a new ship and warp off, and I'd recloak. And ever since then, I've tried to find ways to use orcas beyond mining. I mean, I've done my fair share of mining in orcas, and more recently with what Liz is talking about, I have been using orcas for level 4 mission running, and they are surprisingly very good at it. And I don't really want to talk about too much because I don't want CCP to take the nerf bat to the orca, but they're capable.
But come on, when we're carrying little kids through level 4 missions, they really do come in handy. You've got storage, and you can throw something on to save a little kid a little bit of heartache if they can make it through a couple of level 4s. It's one of those things. I don't like to personally do solo level 4s. I would rather turn it into a group dynamic. Get people to learn. It's like the way I learned Logi is they didn't need me. I didn't realize that at the time that they didn't need me, but they stuck me in a Logi ship, and they would kind of get low in their shields, and they would have me warp in and rep them up, and and I thought I was doing all these great things. Turns out they just weren't turning on their gear. I mean, but that's the thing. I didn't know at the time.
Some of those early days of your training in Logi, though, when it came to pause stuff, we needed every Logi we could get in those days for our conga lines.
You know, I miss that so much. That is the one thing none of the younger groups are who didn't do it. They're not going to understand that teamwork that you needed to do. That your structure would not just heal up. You actually had to go give it health. You had to revive it. And you had to not get caught while doing it. That was an experience that, you know, and then all of a sudden it's like you've got everybody where you're orbiting the structure, and it's like, conga line, let's go.
And I mean, that totally brings back memories of where there'd be anywhere from 6, 10, 12, 15 Ospreys orbiting a pause tower. I mean, their shields, they could regenerate on their own. But when you're talking like, armor and structure, you had to be there and fix it. But those pause shields, you're looking at hours and hours and hours of them just slowly building back up. So you got a whole group of people together, especially if you were in low sec. You orbited a tower for an hour, sometimes 2, and just had a conversation with your friends, and you repped that thing up. I mean, I remember several times our towers getting hit during wars, and there would not only be 10, 12, 15 guys orbiting the pause and ospreys, but several times, and you were there, I would have carriers in the old school triage setups, and just trying to get those, whether we were doing structure or armor, and especially shields, trying to get those repaired as quickly as possible before war targets came back.
See, that's, a lot of people aren't going to know that feeling. Sorry, we are going back down in history here. I am coming up on my 10th year in EVE this year, come October. So, there's been a lot of changes since then.
And I was going to continue with what you were saying, in that as much as structures have added some new ways of approaching the game, I think they have robbed players of a lot of important play touch points. You're talking, the Citadels will just rep themselves. It's a very hands-off experience. It's not as you're working to preserve what you had. You're either there for the fight or you're not. As where I feel there was something about the old structures before we got into Citadels and engineering complexes and refineries. You know, the old style stuff forced, but it encouraged, that's the word. It encouraged group collaboration for success, unlike these new structures. I mean, we've defended tons of structures. We've blown up structures. I feel like the new Upwell stuff just was not as team building as the old stuff.
Well, even to the point of like the first original ones, we all worked on to build those, but now there's specialized people who you just buy them from, or they're on the market, or, you know, we've lost that little bit of the team for things like that. I mean, how many times did those freaking Menry towers. I mean, how many times did we have to go out there? It was like every other day for a while there. And it was just like, I mean, it was a joke. I mean, there were some times that it was like me and a little bantam just out there so I could move quickly just to kind of hit things with it real quick. I mean, it just, I love where the game is going for a lot of things. And then there's other things I look back at and think, well, we had this and we had to do this because this brought us this. So I'd like to see a little bit more of that come back into the game, but we'll see.
I think it would be a good mechanic for the Citadels to allow for like where the group could repair and things like that, as opposed to just waiting for a magic timer to do it. I think it put everyone's skin in the game so they felt attached, because even though the current structures, Citadels, complexes, so on, are more expensive and more resource intensive, there's not as much of collaborative group effort to make it operate. It can get dropped and operated by one person. And if it gets attacked, it just has to survive a timer long enough and then boom, it's fixed. It's done it on its own. It's supposed to be treated as a far more intelligent.
But it's supposed to be disposable. Whereas it costs more, it doesn't have any kind of self-defense on it. Like,
Positives too.
Yeah, I really, maybe because 2016, 2017, 2018, and 2019, we had such a big thing about them. And it was like, we thought they were going to be all that in a bag of Doritos. And I think for us, looking back on what we've gone through in our past alone, it's like, it really wasn't worth it for our group to even do that. It was such a heartache.
And like you'd mentioned, they don't defend themselves. And actually, I feel like their slots, how they're all kind of built in a way now, basically like a spin on ships, kind of robs them of what made pauses special. A pause, you could really tailor and customize and manage what that could do, and it defended itself. And sure, they could be quite powerful, but they could also be quite bad. But the onus of that was on the person who put it together. And for significantly less money, you got far more flexibility and versatility. And I do feel that the Upwell structures were a letdown. I mean, they started out in their first 6 months far better than they are now. I think where they are now is a real disappointment compared to, I want to say, 2016, 2017, where they were far more interesting prospect. And sadly, people just wanted it to become easier and disposable as sync, I guess you could say. And that kind of leads to where I'm scratching my head, getting back to Equinox, about the two other new structures that are coming out. So as previously discussed, there's the Skyhook, which is kind of like the crux of everything with the new planetary industry and workforce and all these NPC content perks. But there's one particular structure that they're launching, which I felt was only a matter of time before it came. And this, I understand why they're doing it, but at the same time, I'm not a fan. I get it, but I don't like it. And that's the introduction of the Metenox moon drill, which is being created to automate the planetary harvesting process. Or, sorry, moons, not planets. I can see where the argument is that this will automate and allow groups to more easily tap the vast resources and, say, a large swath of space at which they claim sovereignty. Okay. At the same time, I think these groups have enough money and large enough populations, giving them kind of a semi-automated tool, despite how expensive it will be. Yes, they're going to have to pay to put this down and to operate it. I get it. And it's going to be a target. But I feel with our large enough groups, and again, I don't want to name names, there's going to be enough distant core worlds away from the front lines and from your backdoor access points, these can just exist. And it's putting more money into the hands of larger groups. Yes, it's going to take a lot of money and resources to build these, but if you move their economies of scale, make the timing just right on things, it's gonna make it harder to push people out of regions that they're heavily entrenched. It's allowing the wealth of a group to generate vast more wealth and drive the wedge between them and others further and making them more untouchable. I feel like that's almost antithetical to what EVE stands for. For me personally, this is what I think.
I think like my whole take on this is, okay, is it going to be a hands-off approach? I mean, before we just had the siphons, where you would just get a little bit and you'd have to go take it, or it would shut off and things like that. When it comes down to the new stuff, it's going to be kind of hands-off. Does that mean that they're going to get a nerf in what they are actually gaining in incentives of not having players on the field? Or are we going back to the old days of where it was basically hands-off? They just set up their programs and then, once a week did the pools and things like that. So, I mean, they've probably griped about it for a while, but I think we had the supposed scarcity, that it affects some people and it didn't affect others, and that's a whole other rabbit hole we're not going down. But I don't know. Until we know more, it's like we're speculating, and it's like, and these things are supposed to be tougher than what we have here, and it's like, okay.
A key sentence to take away from talking about the Metenox is in the description on the website is ownership of these moon drills and skyhooks can determine control over the valuable resources of a system, making them prized assets that rival factions can contest, which is sure to spark new waves of conflict and excitement. Yes, and possibly no. I know that there's concerns about certain groups in the game being almost unkillable, and things like this, which will be massive resource hogs to put together, and it will consume a lot of capital. It's going to fulfill the goal of the quote-unquote ISK sync, which is great, right? It's going to encourage money to move around, I think, largely in some of your massive null groups. It's just not going to encourage the money to go very far because they've already built a closed loop system. So the money is just going to stay within that loop. But I think it's just going to make them harder to push out of where they are. And the fact that it's automated, and yes, it's all speculation. We're not going to know until we actually see blueprint information and things like that. How much are you paying for this automation? I mean, surely I can think of 2 or 3 major groups in the game. They'll still pay it because they just have the money and capability to do it. But I'm just a little concerned about the automated nature of it. Adding automation to make their massive empires easier to operate. I don't know.
My whole thing is summer's coming, and this is typically a time of war in EVE. So are we making people turtle for the next year to be able to get all their infrastructure in place so there's not going to be any fighting? Or, because everybody always wants to push, fight, fight, fight. And sometimes it's like, these guys have had, when did everybody come out after Blackout? Blackout was what, 2019? And then we had some good stuff because people had downtime because of the C word, where people were sitting and playing. There was some good wars and stuff then too. I didn't follow most of that because I had my own things going. So are we going to see another year of turtling that we didn't really see any fighting, major conflicts?
I don't know, and that's a good question. And one of the things where I think it's an odd choice, still talking about the Metenox, is unlike the Skyhook, this they're allowing into lowsec. And I think that's a very interesting choice. I mean, I know it makes sense in the way that they are diversified more what security statuses get what material. So, strategically smart for a large group to, have greater reach into lowsec to kind of balance out their inventory. I'm kind of curious that the Metenox is being allowed into lowsec, something which I think kind of opens it up to even more danger because you're talking very likely they're positioned more inwards on the map than, say, your far-flung nullsec. So it gives it greater likelihood of being struck by more groups of people. And that's not including your lowsec guys, but I'm saying other null groups. To allow the Metenox into lowsec and not the Skyhook just feels really confusing to me. It feels like an odd choice. And it's not said here, but will these possibly be allowable in wormhole space? They just say nullsec, but...
See, that was my thing. It's like, okay, there's some big groups operating in and around wormholes. Why aren't these in the higher echelon wormholes?
It's technically null. It's not sovereignty, but...
Yeah, I think it all has to do, but I mean, at least like the moon mining. Why isn't that going to be allowed in wormholes?
Well, and that leads us to the next structure, which is the final structure of the suite that they're offering in Equinox, which is the new Sovereignty Hub. So it's going to replace the Infrastructure Hub and the Territorial Claim Unit. And based on the scale that I'm seeing in the videos, and I'll put some images here on the cast for everyone to see, this, like the Skyhook, it looks dockable. So is this something that you're essentially building a giant slab in space? Clearly, it's going to be harder to screw with, which is disappointing, right? Some of the classic shenanigans are going to go away, but also it looks like it's going to be a heck of a lot more to tear down because it's a massive structure.
I was just wondering, are people even running the TCUs anymore or the hubs? I haven't seen that in a while. I haven't seen any videos on that. I don't think I've even seen anybody streaming like the open fleets to go out and hit those anymore. I haven't seen that in a while. So
I just think it's interesting that they're taking something that allowed for some simple combat play. This isn't officially out yet, but it looks like it's just another option for a Citadel. This is a specific Citadel that has our sovereignty perk. We'll just have to see. But they are saying that this structure allows for a more nuanced approach to sovereignty, unlike the current system. And they're saying that includes certain upgrades, allow the discovery of previously undetectable ore. So I think they're going to use that as a way to try to bring high sec and low sec accessible material into null sec. So they're going to broaden what you can get in null sec again, as well as the undetectable ore. Other upgrades will assist in the detection of more impactful pirate targets and more. So it's going to allow for even greater crabbing from what it sounds like, which again just causes some concern for me that they're creating all these new and easier money-making opportunities in null.
For the highest paid portion of the game.
And that concerns me. Yes, I understand, quote unquote, that's where some of your large, hardcore players are. That's been argued a lot over the years. That's where your artist core base exists and your big money making base. But as much as I hear that argument, okay, that's a valid argument, I also believe CCP has a responsibility to all of the players, not just the NPC group. And if it was these structures on their own coming into the game, that would be one thing. But the fact that they're propping up null-related industry in a way no other groups will get advanced, and even propping up nullsec PvE, it feels like you're deliberately handing a toy that no one else can have. And sure, some people could argue, well, this incentivizes people who wants these benefits to go more into nullsec. Well, there's only so much nullsec out there. And yes, I understand there's a lot, but let's be honest. You can only do so much there.
I feel like we're going to an abundant stage again to where it's going to cost you to get in to do these things for now. But once you're there, it's not going to be that hard to get them out like we've seen. I mean, we saw people go into other people's front doorsteps and get down to the last system. I don't think that's going to be possible with the changes that have been made for a while. But the EVE players are very smart. They will find a way to work this in their favor at all costs. I mean, that's just what they do. That's part of the game. I think we're gonna see an overabundance again, and others are not gonna be happy with it, and it's like.
I definitely agree that it is part of the game. What my concern is that this creates so much infrastructure. It's going to be too much work for some to push certain groups out, and others are going to be making so much more money comparatively than they were before as a result of these new structures, which, yes, I understand there's going to be resources and capital and time that will be allocated to making these happen. That's logical. That kind of settling into the new normal, and then the industry has to do what it does to get these structures out. I get that. But after that initial point where we start seeing these structures roll out and be deployed, I think it's going to be too hard to get some groups out. You're just going to have some FCs and some alliance leaders and coalition leaders are going to say, you know what? I don't want to be grinding hundreds of structures just to clear this space out so we can get these guys out and we can claim it. I think you'll see some groups just throw up their hands because there are a lot of players. They don't want to grind a structure over and over and over and over and over and over again, especially in tie-dye. And that's what this is all going to create. But my concern is, this is creating more money for these groups on multiple fronts. So I said, one, it'll be harder to push the people out. But my second concern is not only going to make more money in terms of industry, but then your crabbers and your PvE, which that's giving more opportunities to one segment of the population. And like I was saying, I think CCP has a responsibility to give content to others, to everyone, not just this one group. And if your argument is, well, just go to nullsec or tough it out, or I don't think that's viable. I mean, we all know HiSec is largely despised by many in the game. It's made fun of, it's criticized. It has its purpose, but it's largely sneered at by a lot of people. Low sec is largely forgotten. So it's been kind of, they said it and they forgot about it. And then wormholes were the new child starting when Apocrypha launched. And it seems wormholes have just been kind of forgotten. And I feel like if you're going to give so much to null, which in all fairness, I hate to say, I think there's a certain level of politics that have influenced the creation of these assets. And I'll just leave it at that. We can talk about that another time. But
now, I'd like other people's opinion on this. From where you sit, do you feel, when you look at the Equinox stuff, what does it make you feel? What are you seeing that maybe we're not seeing? Where are you sitting there questioning? My whole thing about this whole thing is, I am about getting people in. I am new player friendly. I love the new kids. I love getting them in there and things like that. So I look at this and it's like, whatever, dude. I'm going to go, if we're going to go hit something, I'm going to find an open fleet somewhere that is community based that I'm going to go try to join in and see what's going on with the game. That's how I like to play my game. Everybody likes to play the game differently. And I cannot stress enough, play the game you want to play it your way, and don't be pigeonholed into anything, though.
Totally. And I definitely agree. My concern is just developers giving too much to one population.
Everywhere outside of null, probably everything outside of a big alliance or contingency. We are not going to see the smaller null groups to be able to kind of get in there and do this for a while. This is going to take some timing to do. This benefits, 5, 6, 10 big groups maybe? The more I think about it, it's like, we've sat here and talked about it a little bit, and we've talked about it for a couple days at this point. And it's like, the more I think about it, it's like, I have questions. How is this really going to impact everybody outside of the larger groups? And my whole thing is, I don't want to be in one of those larger groups. I just don't want to do it. That is not my gameplay. That is not my style. I just don't want to do that. So
you said it just now in a way that resonates, and I don't want to have to be forced into a larger group just to take advantage of these cool new toys. And that's what they're essentially saying is if you want to experience this, you have to join a large group.
Oh, okay, but even if you're going to do like a coalition thing, okay, of the smaller players, they're going to have to like either write some written agreements to where there's penalties that can be enforced if they screw each other over, because they're small enough. With the smaller groups, it's harder. I mean, if we're building on, this system here and then your system's here and we're part of this coalition and you're second in line, and then all of a sudden first is like, we got our stuff. And then the second is like, we got our stuff. How are the other people in the coalition? How are you going to evenly divide that? And that's going to be some working. And here's the thing. I'm going to say to the smaller groups, work it out. Help each other. If you want to be able to be able to do these things, that may be your only way, is to find a way to coordinate and work with each other.
And that's, like I was saying, what you said a moment ago, I think that's what actually rings the most true is I don't want to have to be forced to join a big group to experience this. And that's disappointing. But, we'll see more as we get closer to launch. And of course, we'll probably end up reviewing each of these things as they roll out and we get some experience. Maybe we'll get some CC experience with them. I don't know. We'll have to see how that works out. Before we wrap up here, I will mention, in Equinox, some of the things we didn't cover. There is going to be a whole slew of things coming out regarding Vanguard. Vanguard probably won't be something we really cover a lot here. Full transparency, we're not FPS players here, but I will try to keep everyone up to date with the news that I see about it.
Here, I'm gonna run it out here. If you are a Vanguard player, come talk to us. Maybe you'll hype us into. I probably will never be a first-person shooter, but give us your side, what you're doing. We're open to doing some interviews and talking to people. Give us a taste of what you've got.
Yep. And in addition to the Vanguard stuff, they are also going to be dropping some new anomalies for the crabbers of nullsec. So yet another feature. It's not structure related, but another thing for the nullsecers. And that's another thing Liz brings up. We are hoping to do interviews in the future as well. And maybe we'll get high enough to where we can interview CSM candidates someday.
Well, you have run for CSM. I have run for CSM. Neither one of us made them. Maybe we'll just interview each other and what we would have done differently in our platforms. I mean, seriously, I didn't know what I was doing. It was for shits and giggles. I mean, at the time, it was like, why not? Why not get my name out there and figure out how it all works? I mean, so.
Maybe this can become our platform. We'll just have to see.
I've done it once. I may eventually do it again. We'll see.
Well, I think that's as good of an ending point as any. Thank you for anyone who's listened to us up to this point. It's been a lot longer than I thought. We were able to keep this conversation going. Pat ourselves on the back, little round of applause. I hope everyone listening enjoyed it. Send us your comments and feedback, and we will keep you up to date on all the social media. We'll let you guys know when we join different channels. Our first platform is going to be YouTube. Then we're also in the process of looking at other podcast platforms, including Spotify, Apple Podcast. Just keep checking our Twitter for any updates. I'm Urza, and this is Liz.
We are The Gate is Green. And 07 to all of you, and may you have a great flying experience.
All right. Good night, everybody.
It may be daylight for them. How about just goodbye?
Oh, wow.
How about an 07? Just salute the shit out of everybody.
07, everybody. Don't crash your pods. Fly safe. And remember the golden rule. Don't fly it if you can't replace it.